Welcome to another military interview by the Sons of History. I'm Dustin Bass. In this video, I will be interviewing Barbara Moneypenny and Sharon Crosby, the daughters of Harry Albert Elias, who fought in the 35th Infantry Division during World War II. Now, the purpose behind these interviews is not to talk so much about the war themselves, but to get the perspective, the soldiers' perspective of what they saw and what they did. So without further ado, I present to you the war story of Harry Albert Elias. All right, so I am with Barbara Moneypenny and Sharon Crosby. They are the daughters of Harry Albert Elias, who had served in World War II. We're going to be talking about that with both of you, his experience in the war, but more importantly, to an extent, the chronicling of his experience in the war. I want to focus on why that is so important to do and why it was important for you to do. Now, Sharon, you're the one who reached out to me. You had run across the article that I had written for the Epoch Times on George Khalil, a World War II veteran. Interestingly enough, was apparently involved in a lot of the same campaigns as your father, the EAME campaigns. He was in with the First Army, and I think to an extent he did have some interactions with George Patton. And it's interestingly enough that your father and George Khalil may have somehow been at least close to each other at the same exact times. And it's interesting that, writing about him has brought us together. Thank you for reaching out and letting me capture, to an extent, the story of your father. Now, Barbara, you're the one who chronicled this story with your father, correct?
Yes.
So when did you start working on this with your dad?
I'm trying to think exact time. It was just before Father's Day. I wanted to give him a special gift, and there's just no way. It was in 1996, and so he had a great big box full of pictures that he took during World War II. He carried a little brownie camera with him. Everywhere he went, he took pictures. And then he would either type or write on the back of the pictures of what happened and what was going on in that picture. And I said, Dad, let's sit down. Let's try to get this in order some way. And let's go through your life as a soldier. And so we sat for days on end, just sorting pictures, talking. I learned so much from my dad, what all he went through and how horrible it was. A lot of people didn't realize this. This is one thing he kept on saying. It rained a lot over there when I was there. And he said, all we did was go through mud, and more mud. He got to the point, he says, did you ever try digging a foxhole in mud? It was impossible. And then they were taking the trucks, carrying the artillery around and getting stuck all the time. And it was just unreal. All the hardships, trying to put a tent up at times, going through the small towns in Europe. It was just like, one thing he would just say to me, he said, you see a cow and you'd like to get some fresh meat or fresh milk, one or the other. And he said, we couldn't even go touch it because a lot of the buildings, a lot of the animals were booby trapped. Mm. And he, to go into a home to get out of the weather or do something like that, they couldn't do a lot of times. And it was real, I never knew that until I was sitting there talking to him. And just the different things that happened and what he went through was really interesting.
Now, when did your father pass away?
2005.
2005. It's so, I mean, what, 9 years later? Now that is, still almost a decade later. But what was y'all's experience with him as far as the stories that he would tell prior to 1996?
He didn't talk a whole lot about it, probably because he had 3 daughters. When we were younger, we heard almost nothing. As we got older, we could pull little bits of stories out, and he would talk, he would tell us things, but a lot of it was more storytelling, like, yeah, when I was in basic training in El Paso, they took us out on the desert and we had to really watch where we were, and we had to shake out everything at night because there were rattlesnakes. And one time they cooked a rattlesnake and it tasted like chicken. And stories, they were just stories that you remember. And as we got even older, then he went into one of the camps near Gardelegen, and he, of course, never explicitly told us what he saw. They had moved the survivors of the camp out, but they brought the townspeople in to do the cleanup, and they were the regiment that was in charge of that. So he saw some things that just weren't conducive to sitting down and talking about. It was too hard for him. But it was just little bits and pieces would come out, and you'd hear just these little things that, oh, okay, so that's what it was like. And he told us about the barracks and the food and the marching and the mud and the rain. But a lot of the more serious things we learned through the pictures and the notations on the pictures after the fact.
When I was sitting and doing the book with Dad, he went into a little bit more detail about what he saw and experienced. He was talking about the march going to that camp. He was talking to me about finding bodies along the road and about the horror of it. He also talked about, I don't even want to go into detail because some of it was pretty gross. I mean, so it was unreal.
That was the Gardelegen March. I don't think it was called that, but that was the march where they were deliberately, it was the death march where they were trying to kill as many as they could and get them out of sight so that, so that the Allies wouldn't find them. So yeah, it was pretty bad.
And part of the group that was marching these men to this barn was young people. And he just couldn't imagine a young person doing that because all the men were, elsewhere fighting for Germany. Right. And here these were teenagers, and they herded them into a barn and just set it on fire. It was just unreal. And Dad liberated some of the concentration camps there. And the general he was under at that time, and I don't have his name, I wish I did, they would not let the people come in with masks over their face or gloves. They said, you could smell what happened here in your town. You're going to bury them without gloves, without masks. That's your job. And they made the townspeople clean up, bury, and do different things like that. And and he just went into some of the things into detail that was just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. It was,
Getting into the details of it and him being willing, from my perspective, it seems that it was almost like three reasons, and you can tell me if I'm correct or not, sort of three reasons for opening up and saying, okay, here are some of the dark stories that took place. One, sort of end of life. He's old. He's not going to be around for very much longer, and he knows that. Two, it's important enough to be chronicled. It needs to be put out there, and obviously, you can only get so many details from photos and everything. But sort of that, I guess it's four reasons. Another would be you're old enough to handle the conversation, and I think the fourth reason is interest, coming forward and saying, Dad, let's sit down and let's chronicle your story. And I think I have experienced and I've heard that is one of the most important things for veterans, is to have somebody show an interest in that person's personal story. Do you think that those four things coming together helped him sort of, okay, I'm going to give you maybe not everything, but I'm going to give you a lot?
yes, definitely with me. We would, like I said, we would sit for hours and talk about different battles, different things he saw. But that march there was the main thing that really, really bothered him to no end. That how cruel somebody could be to herd everybody in, not lock the door, but block all the exits and then just set it on fire. He said there were people literally coming out from underneath the barn, and then they would just shoot him. And he just, it was like, wow, it bothered me for a while. I mean, to even this day, that's a part of the book I look at and sort of skip over real quick. And he also took pictures there. He took pictures of things that he wanted to, I think because he wanted to eventually have it come out, let the people know, see the horror that was actually going on.
Those are some that are now with the Holocaust Museum in Washington. I found them, and based on an article out of Wall Street Journal on Gardelegen, I got in contact with the author, and he put me in contact with Holocaust Museum. And one of the photos was a Red Cross ambulance. And the lady I was dealing with, when she saw the pictures, just stopped and said, we'd heard stories that the Red Cross was there, but this is the only picture of proof we've ever seen. So it's like, Dad, this was supposed to be. This is why you took that picture. So that, I know Dad would have been very, very happy to know that his pictures were in a place where they would actually go toward preserving this important and horrendous piece of history.
Yeah, I mean, he was capturing history as it happened with his Brownie camera. Now, Barbara, you said that you worked with your dad on the book. Can you show us the book and sort of what it looks like, just to give an idea of what it looks like?
Oh,
because I have been graciously given a copy. I thank you both very much.
Yeah, I copied a good bit of it. I didn't copy the entire thing. Some of it I figured was more just personal little things that wouldn't be salient, but if you need more, I know where to get it done.
You do, yeah. You know something.
I don't know if you can really see it that well. It's just a Xerox. Truthfully, I just got a computer and I was learning how to use it. So it's not the greatest, but it, at least we have a history of it.
Right.
And I just put it together, early years before the war and stuff
Yeah, I
like
didn't
that.
send those. Well, I may have because of the baseball picture. I may have sent that one.
Yeah, and then when he was in England and showing the churches, how they were all bombed and different comments he made. Let's see, the Rhine River, how they would bomb. I'm trying to, and how they would bomb the bridges, and they would come and repair them and do a makeshift bridge. I hope she sent you the article. There was a survivor out of that barn, by the way, and he wrote an article for the Stars and Stripes. But this is what I was talking about, the barn.
Right. Yeah. I was given that. Yeah.
Okay, and it's just a lot of things
Now
that he saw.
I have to ask because you've had millions of veterans, and millions involved in World War II, and obviously not everybody has taken the time to sit down with their father, who was part of it, and say, hey, let's talk about it and let's chronicle it. And not that that's like an indictment on anyone. For a lot of people, it's just, well, I sat down and I talked to my father and we got the story and I heard about it. So, and it's going to be an oral tradition. Why did you, what was it about saying, let's sit down and actually, I'm going to chronicle this. I'm going to get the pictures and I'm going to get, the text on there to say, okay, this is what it was. And a lot of it feels like it's done by your father, because some of it to an extent is almost intimately written. Why did you decide to do it this way?
Like I said, I just got a computer and I wanted to improve my skills, but that's not it completely. I thought if I had it in a book, it would be history of our father. And it was just something that I felt I needed to do. He had Parkinson's. And I knew I needed to get this done. Can I show you an example? Now, this is a picture at the Battle of the Bulge. This is a German Tiger tank. Now, when Dad was over there, he had access to a typewriter because he was basically the secretary who set up and did all the paperwork, and like radar was on MASH. Okay. And he would type and tell you everything about, the picture. And so we would look at the picture, we would decide, Dad, what's special about this? Do you want this in the book? Hey, yeah, that's sort of neat. People don't know what a Tiger tank is. And so I'd scan it, I'd write what was usually on the back of the picture and his extra comments. But it's just something that I felt deep down I needed to do for my father. My dad and he had a super close relationship with all of us, okay? But he made you feel that you were the one. And I just felt like I was the one that needed to get this out and get it, for each of our family members. And I said, when I pass on, my daughter gets this book. I already sent an extra copy to a relative who's in the military. I said, whatever you do, you know where to put it. And I have these pictures that are from the war. I said, I'm going to give them all to you. I want you to make sure they're safeguarded and they get into a special museum or something for the history to continue. But I just, like I said, I felt I needed to do this.
Yeah. Now, Sharon, from your perspective, one, how important is it for you? And two, what would you say to people who may have relatives or a father who was in World War II or the Korean War, which happened shortly thereafter, or Vietnam?
Mhm.
How important is it for people to do something along these lines?
Oh, I think it's of the utmost importance, not just for the family. It's wonderful for the family to know, but we're losing the history as these men pass away, and sadly, we're seeing it being lied about. We're being more and more, we're hearing the Holocaust never happened. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the generation that's gone and going, and my generation who is aging rapidly. And if we don't pass it on to the next generation and make sure they understand that this really happened, and it's not a single solitary event, but unless we safeguard all the wonderful things that we've had in this nation, it'll happen again. And it's just urgently important.
Now, I completely agree with that sentiment, 100%. That's one of the primary reasons why we do the show, The Sons of History. Now, tell me a bit about your father. There's a picture of him in a baseball uniform. How good of a baseball player was he?
Excellent. He was still playing baseball, well, not baseball, baseball. Our relatives, young guys, would come over, and he would be in his 60s, and he was still out there throwing that ball spot on. I mean, they would say, "Hey, Al, a little bit easier, it's hurting." I mean, he really was good. And if
He had
he
three
had
daughters.
known he needed glasses, he would have been even better.
Yeah. Now,
He had a
you told me before we got started on here that he had a possibly promising career in baseball. What was that about?
He was with the Farm League and was tapped for the majors. And I believe he would have gone on, but World War II came up and he was drafted, and that was that. So he never looked back.
And it was the
Mm-mm.
farm league for the Cleveland Indians, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
What was I going to say? Go on. Just,
no, so he goes to war. He fights. He spends. How long was he in World War II?
2 years, wasn't it?
yes, it wasn't the whole time. It was short. Dad had a job on the railroad. He didn't have to go.
Mm-hmm.
He had it made. He had a minister that said, "I will write you a letter. You don't need to go over there." Dad said, "No, I need to go." And so, he finally went over, and like I said, he saw a lot,
So
did a lot.
he wound up in England in January of '44, entered the war in mid-July of '44, and didn't get out until October of '45. He didn't come back home until more or less everything was said and done in the European and the Pacific theater. So,
Yes.
he was in the big mix of 44 and 45 to sort of bring it all to a close. I don't let's not get into Berlin just yet, but give me some stories on some of the things that he did during his time in the war, and then I want us to lead up to Berlin. Just some of the battles that he was in.
Oh, like the Battle of the Bulge and stuff
Right.
like that. Okay, he was in that battle, and I'm trying to think. He would tell me about how horrible it was, how cold, and
Yes.
how they just, if I'm trying to think what all he said, it was just unreal. Again, one of the pictures he took and showed me, I'll show this to you right, right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's a forest. And it has a lot of trees there. And he said, you see that forest there? He said, just a little while later, a bomb hit it. He said, all that was left was stumps. Nothing was there. He said, another area in the Battle of the Bulge, they were at a riverside, and I guess the river was the front line. I can't remember, again, I don't have it in front of me.
It was.
But he said that all of the artillery was all in that one area, and all night they bombed and bombed and bombed the Germans. He said it was just by the grace of God that not one bomb hit that artillery. He said if it did, there'd been nothing left of any of them.
I think that was the Maginot Line, when he was at the Maginot Line.
Yeah. It was just, and then he got stuck in a tunnel. Did you remember that part?
That was the Maginot Line,
Yeah,
yeah.
again, the same place, but he got stuck in a tunnel and with another guy, and he doesn't even know how they got out alive. He said, again, grace of God. He was very religious, and here's the tunnel he was stuck in.
There you go.
And he said at both ends, they were being shot at. And again, he should have been blown up, and he wasn't. And
Like the house he was in front of, and they dropped a bomb into the house while he was standing in front of it. And he said, I almost bought it. And he walked away.
I mean, there were so many stories like that. It's just, and that's where he got the Bronze Star, wasn't it?
Well, it does say that he got a Bronze Star.
Yeah, this one here, standing, is my dad. The
Okay.
guy next to him, they were in line getting ready to get their Bronze Stars at this ceremony here. And he said, back over in this, let me get over here, back over in this area of the town, I don't have the picture, but there's a big red cross on top of a building. They had a hospital there. He said, not once was that hospital bombed. Not once. They respected each other's hospitals and did not bomb them. And remember I told you about the animals? Here's possibly supper.
Possibly supper, possibly a booby trap.
Lamb chop.
And unfortunately, a lot of these, the backs of them it's faded now, but there was little stickers on the back that said top secret, can't be published, stuff like that, when Dad would send these home to Mom or Grandma.
Now, going back to him actually arriving, I did, because you had brought this up. I wanted you to show this before the card that he got on when he got on the boat that brought them to England. Show us that. Let's give a bit of a background on that.
Oh, well, I got to finish it, find it. I threw it down.
I have the card, I have the book. I have it in the book.
Right. So there was this, yeah. And so all of the soldiers got this card, this souvenir card.
Here's the original right here.
You get the original. Okay, that's better.
Duchess of Richmond, and he said later on it was bombed but it was a luxury liner. And of course, when they were on it, they had hammocks, no cabins, no nice beds or anything like that.
And everybody was seasick.
Yeah. And it said, may your task soon be over, your good fighting done. May you soon be back home again with victory won. Good luck. And then everyone, different people, different soldiers on the ship signed their names. Autograph card. And Dad kept that the whole way through the war with him. Oh, he was already a sergeant by then too.
Oh, wow.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. I mean, we discovered even something new from this conversation.
Exactly. Right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah.
So your father was married at the time. When did he get married? Was it while he was serving? Because I think it was he was doing training in 42, and so he was like from 42 to 45. When did he get married?
In March of 42, and they were married, golly, how many, I guess a couple months before he shipped out. They didn't have a honeymoon.
Oh, yes, they did. His
Well, they
friend,
did after the war.
Well, his friend took him to Youngstown.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And
That's
that was his
Saturday
honeymoon.
night in Toledo, Ohio. No, they went to Youngstown, but when he got home, they took the train across from Ohio to San Francisco. So they actually had their honeymoon belatedly, but yeah, he shipped out.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Sharon, freezing up a little bit there.
Yeah, here is
Mine does that. Mine's done that like 5 or 6 times.
Dad at the barracks in California. Camp Pendleton, is it?
Okay.
I believe Judd was at Pendleton in California.
So, but I mean, can you think of a better place to have your honeymoon than Youngstown?
No, wow. I mean, that's really living it. And they got married on St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
On a Wednesday.
Now, are you saying that because he's Irish?
Oh, no.
Okay.
That's the only way they could get married, have a short honeymoon, and then head back to California.
Oh, okay.
So it was a matter of convenience.
Uh-huh.
And it was a beautiful wedding. It was,
but he was Irish.
What?
What, Sharon?
He was Irish.
Was not Irish. Okay, well, there you go.
And he's not Catholic either.
Yeah. I have no clue where the surname came from.
Well, I guess we can put Ireland out.
Exactly.
So you have this great card, and eventually that ship gets taken down. Your dad is on a luxury liner on a hammock with caviar, obviously. Comes standard, and he comes now. He was in an artillery regiment, correct? Did he tell you anything on that, like what that entailed?
The big guns.
Yeah, he talks a lot about the guns in the book, and I think that Dad maybe actually from being around all the artillery may have had just what now we would call PTSD, because Dad never liked a loud noise. We got one free pop of our gum, and the second pop, you go throw that away. And as a child, you're like, well, gee, Daddy, everybody pops their gum. But as I got older, I started putting it together. He didn't like any sudden loud noise. And
Ice
it wasn't that he
cubes.
freaked out over it, but he didn't like it at all. And he was, your typical World War II vet, the quiet, gentle, super quiet, but at the same time, he was so gentle. Every baby in the family, he loved little babies. And as big as he was with his big old hands, he'd take that crying baby that nobody could comfort, and that baby would go to sleep in his arms. Just, had that mix, just the gentle, quiet man. But I really think he had a little bit, in retrospect, just a little bit of PTSD, because everywhere in that book it talks about we were being shelled and this and that. And it's like, he's standing in front of a house that gets bombed. So that has to wreak a little bit of havoc with you.
Here's the house.
Oh,
I
wow.
just found the picture
Yes.
in the rubble. And remember I told you about the forest in the Battle of the Bulge? There's the trees. They're all gone.
Wow.
It's just unreal. Yeah, he had pictures of shells and, these are the buzz bombs that were used in England. So, he was constantly around the loud noises, the big guns. And I was looking at some of the gun pictures. Oh, here's one of the, trying to get it.
There you go.
Yeah, and I had a picture of the hole. This may be one of it.
And Dad called it
Yeah.
back.
You see that crater there?
Oh yeah, the crater.
Yeah, that was made by a 500-pound bomb.
Wow.
Dad wrote on the back of that one also.
Now, obviously, he wasn't standing there when the bomb went.
No. Thank goodness he wouldn't have. Yeah, but I could, and then
That's when
remember I told you about the mud.
No, what is that?
The mud.
Yeah.
And again, he wrote on the back about how bad
You got it
was.
upside down, flip it.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, we learned a lot.
Did he mention anything about, so he goes through obviously France and Belgium. You said he also went into Holland, but that was
Yes.
to sort of, in the notes it says R&R. Does that mean rest and relaxation, or is that
Yes. I think
rifles and refuge or something? I don't know.
probably.
So, and then obviously he winds up in Germany. What was the one place maybe that he said this was the place that I enjoyed being the most? Because oddly enough, there are places that a lot of veterans will say, man, I really enjoyed going in, and this, especially when they're liberating places and they cross people that are so thankful for them showing up. Were there any places that he said, man, I really enjoyed being in France or Belgium or places like that?
He enjoyed the children.
Do what?
He enjoyed the Netherlands too, I believe.
And like I said, he enjoyed the children too.
Yeah.
Our dad was a chocoholic, putting it mildly. You could not keep chocolate away from him.
Oh my gosh, no.
And that's,
Of course, Mom always hid it in the same place, so it made it a little easier.
but
Mom, if you want him to stay out, you got to hide it in a different place.
But the one thing he would talk about a lot is giving the chocolate to the children. I mean, that brought joy to him more than anything else. It was, I mean, when he would tell me about him giving chocolate, I know this sounds dumb, but when he would tell me about giving chocolate away, I just couldn't believe it, because if you knew our father. And that was one of the simple pleasures and the happiness he found while he was over there. It wasn't, I don't think it was so much the people and them thanking them and stuff like that. I think it was just giving, you know, whatever they could to help the people out. Because like he said, the people didn't they had a choice, but some of them didn't, and it made them feel bad.
Yeah. Do you ever think about, because I'm quite certain you've had plenty of time to think about your father's experiences and the experiences of so many who were involved in that. But you mentioned that the hospitals were not hit when they had the Red Cross on it. The children being there, and it sort of bringing this almost solace to your father. Do you ever think about how it's possible to be in such chaos and turmoil of every kind, and yet there be that civility at the same time? What
I don't know.
your mind on that?
I don't know how he did it. I really don't. And I think
because
that's why it took him so long.
His spiritual grounding.
Yeah.
He was a true and deep believer in Christ, and it never wavered, not throughout his entire life. And I think the people that interacted with Dad saw that. And I think he was probably as much of a comforter as anything, because that's the way Dad always was. He'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, just have quiet time before us kids piled down, and do his Bible study. He was always quiet. He was always grounded. And I think that's probably what kept him sane.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of his faith, you captured a story of a friend of his from Cleveland, Bill Weber. How did that story come about, and tell us a little bit about that?
Barb, you'd probably know that. I knew he had the friend, but I don't know. I think they met in basic.
Yeah, and I don't, they were, let me find it in here. He talked about some of the guys, but he really didn't go into a lot of detail with a lot of them. Yeah, he went over with him too, on the ship, and he ended up getting killed over there, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And they
there was
went
a picture of him with his grave.
Yeah.
He talked about him a lot. I think it was just a painful episode, but there is a picture of him with his grave.
And in this story that you have in here, it's about a paragraph. Your dad mentions that the night before he was killed, he had read aloud Romans 8, which, for people who may not know, that's in the Bible in the New Testament after the Gospels, shortly after the Gospels. But that scripture among Christians, one of the more important scriptures or more famous scriptures is, there is therefore now no condemnation who are in Christ Jesus, who walk after the Spirit and not after the flesh. And you're referencing his faith, and it seems that, like, that scripture, obviously, I assume that he's suggesting or was thinking that Bill was trying to speak to his fellow comrades and say, look, more or less witnessing to them.
Yeah.
Do you think that faith connection between the two, and then him dying the day after, was the reason why that left such an impact on his mind?
It probably was. They like I said, they met in the camp, went in training.
Yeah.
Yeah. and they just hit it off, and I guess he was killed repairing a wire or something.
Wire, yeah.
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 It's just,
Yeah, I guess I did send that page. I couldn't remember.
mhm.
Yeah. So it's just one of those sort of,
Army buddies.
yeah, one of those stories that, is hard to hear, but they're bound to be heard. And to an extent, there is that often adage of don't make friends, or at least don't get too close to anybody, because chances are they'll be dead. But you're obviously not really thinking about that in basic training,
No.
especially if you have so many connections on a personal level. You're pretty much from the same area, same faith, and different things like that. But that is an interesting story that it stood out so much, for very obvious reasons.
Well, he wanted it in the book
Mhm.
because he picked out the pictures he wanted. And so, yeah, definitely.
Now, you said, so your father was a pretty laid back, relaxed, gentle man, a gentleman as well. Um, but he got pretty hot and bothered when they got to Berlin. Tell me why he was so upset about that.
Because he sat for 2 weeks and they knew they could have gone in and captured Hitler. And just the fact, he said, what the Russians did to the Germans in Berlin made him sick. The horrors that went on there. And I don't know how far out from Berlin they were, but I don't know if he could hear it, he could see it or anything, because they were really close. And it just, he to this, I mean, to the day he died, he was mad about that.
Yeah.
It bothered him. Yeah, because I mean, you go all through Europe, you're fighting a war, and the person you want is right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Dad valued life, and
Yeah.
had the war ended earlier, that many less men would have had to die.
Right.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I know that, there was an agreement more or less made. I don't want to even call it a gentleman's agreement, but there was an agreement sort of reached that the Russians would enter Berlin first. Now, obviously, Patton was very angry about that too, and rightfully so, that there was a lot of people that were angry, because this was, to an extent, an agreement to allow the Russians to more or less have their revenge on the Germans, more or less for what they did in Operation Barbarossa, which wiped out millions of Russians. And for some people, it may be, oh, that's fine, that's justified. It was the Germans, it was the Nazis. They brought it upon themselves. If anybody within a geographical location in Germany knew what was going on, it would have been the Berliners. And so there is the idea of justification for outright revenge. Your father, obviously, not a man who he believes in the Word of God. He believes in the Bible. He's a man of faith. Obviously, that is not that doesn't work. That doesn't mix with faith. So that's one of those things that it's a combination of the two, to where people can justify it and lay it off on saying, well, that's just war, and that's just the way it goes. And there is no how did your father feel about it? We know how your father felt about it, and how he felt about it till more or less his dying day. But it is interesting that it was, like Sharon said, he cared about life. That was important to him, and the preservation thereof. And so,
Justice,
do what?
justice. I mean, he believed that he should have been brought to trial.
Right.
He should not have, not like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he believed.
So, and it's interesting that he was angry about it throughout the rest of his life, but he was angry about it for the right reasons.
Mhm.
And speaking of scripture, it is, be angry and sin not. So you can be angry about the things that are you can be angry about injustices, and that's almost a philosophical analogy or philosophical talk for another time. But it is interesting, this just to get to walk through his entrance into the war. Now, what was your mother's name? I feel like I'm really going on about the Berlin situation, but it is one of those major moments. But we can get off of that. What was your mother's name?
Lorraine Stickles.
Lorraine. How was their marriage? And show me when you find it. How was their marriage? How was their marriage throughout the war when he was gone? And also show one of the cards that he sent, one of those Christmas cards that he sent.
I'll go get the wedding picture.
Okay.
Their marriage was whatever mom wanted, she got. I mean, he just worshiped her. He loved her and she loved him. And they got along pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how some couples get along nowadays, but they did. I mean, it was how many years? Gee, I'm trying to think, over 60 years.
There, I don't know if yet.
Next up, Youngstown.
The wedding picture.
Hey, Youngstown wasn't too bad back then.
Yeah.
I mean, they had some pretty parks and nice buildings and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, we teased them a lot about that.
Mhm.
About
In
what?
fact-
What did I miss?
Huh?
What did I miss? What are you teasing him about?
The Youngstown.
Youngstown honeymoon.
Did you
Yeah.
see the picture? Did I hold it okay?
You did great. You did
Okay.
great. Now, do you think that your mother got everything that she wanted because she kept leaving the chocolate where he could easily find it?
Probably. I'm sure.
that keeps him happy.
Yeah. Well, he adored mom. I think he would have walked through fire for her.
Now, Barbara, do you happen to have the Christmas card that he had sent her while over in Europe?
He sent, the military gave Dad Christmas cards for family members, and they had to write something on it and send it back. And it was just to make sure that they knew they were still alive and kicking around and still doing their job and whatnot, and they weren't dead. I mean, that's why they gave them these Christmas cards. Oh, shoot. Oh, while I'm looking for it, Dad would write things in the cards and stuff, and Mom would get the letter from him, and she said there was more holes in the letter than writing, because they always had to cut things out because Dad accidentally put in top secret stuff. Yeah. I can't find one of Mom, but this is like one of the Christmas cards that he sent his mom and dad. And he wrote on the back, Merry Xmas, 1944. That card. And then here's another one that they were given somewhere in France. He learned not to tell the exact place he was. And again, in this one, he sent to his dad, telling his dad, "You're the finest and best pal that I have. You've been a real dad." And I thought, wow, that was cool. But I can't find.
Now, was that the same dad who was in World War One?
No, that's my mom's dad. That was in World War One.
Did his dad fight? I never knew if he went to war.
No.
I didn't know.
I don't know what he did, but he did not go to war.
Grandma was a Rosie the
Rosie
Riveter.
the Riveter.
While Dad was at war, Grandma went off and worked in the rubber factories, and at the time they were tooled for the planes.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, found another
There you go.
gun, big gun. This one is 105.
Yeah, the howitzer.
Yeah, howitzer. It's the smallest one. But I don't know if this is his or I can't tell.
And my husband said that Grandma probably worked on the Corsairs because Goodyear was aircraft at the time.
Oh wow, yeah, the Corsairs. I love those. Now, did she walk around doing this all the time? Like, do it?
Could have.
If she did that, it was more likely with a wooden spoon coming at our posterior.
Keep everybody in line.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, was go out and cut a switch, and you better not make it too gentle.
Oh yeah, my parents did the same thing. You had to get your own switch.
Yeah, and you dare not get the little one.
Yeah, I would always get the little one. I would get the weakest one I could possibly find.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I'm going to share, you know how we talked about Dad keeping his sanity? Well, this is another way the whole group kept their sanity while they were over there. While they were over there, they found this little guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they named him Herman, but they called him Hermie. And they found him. He was just went with the guys everywhere. They fed him, they took care of him. And the sad part is when they came home, they weren't allowed to bring him. And so before they came home, they had to go and they actually went and tried to find a family for the dog. That was their buddy. That's what helped them stay sane over there.
Wow. Did they find a home for the dog?
I think they did. I cannot remember for sure. You know, it was something I didn't write down and do a lot with it, but he was so mad that they were going to throw him overboard. And I mean, he was furious. Wow. My dad was a big dog lover.
Yeah, because I mean, I was hoping that, we'll just say yes, they found out, because as people have it, if they watch a movie, everyone can die as long as the dog lives.
Yeah, exactly.
That's there you go.
He was sitting pretty to get some food.
Beautiful. Now I didn't get that part of the book. Sharon left that.
No, I didn't copy that, and I should have, because I forgot we had a dog. And
Sharon and I have the dog connection.
Well, I had one too.
Well, when I vanished a minute ago, I had to reward Shadow because she did a good girl, so I had to go give her a reward.
There you go.
This is, I don't know if you can see it because it's fairly dark, but that's where he got his medal. And over This is the town in the background. And one of these buildings, there was another picture. That's where the hospital was with the cross on it in that area. And like I said, it was really, really interesting. And they said just before that, there was intense bombing going on. And then that was just before they crossed the Rhine River. And they said all these buildings all around were down, bombed.
Yeah.
And they said the hospital was still standing, which really stuck it out in his mind that, at least they followed that rule.
Well, ladies, I tell you, this has been a fascinating conversation. Very enjoyable conversation. I've enjoyed it. And ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about their father, Harry Albert Elias, and a World War II veteran, and just saw a lot, helped liberate an area, saw his fair share of action and fair share of terrible things. And Barbara, Sharon, thank you so much for taking the time, one, to chronicle, and two, to share the story with me. I greatly appreciate it. And it means a lot that y'all would reach out and want to share the story with me. It's an honor. So.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you are doing this. This needs to be done.
That means a great deal. Really appreciate you spending your evening talking about Dad. Kind of fun to see him like he was a long time ago again.
Yeah.
Well, these are the stories that are most interesting, anyways, and I think more people need to hear. That's one of the things that the Epoch Times is allowing me to do, is to write stories, capture these stories on an intimate level of individual veterans, individual soldiers of foreign wars that we've fought in. So it's important to know about it. So I think that brings our conversation to an end. I've definitely enjoyed it. I hope both of you have as well.
Oh, I did. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We hope that you enjoyed this military interview, and we thank you for watching. Before you leave this video, if you could like and leave a comment on this video, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel, it would be greatly appreciated. If you want to find out everything that we're doing over at the Sons of History, please visit our website, thesonsofhistory.com. Again, thank you for watching.